There we go. All right, so our usual opening questions. How much time did people spend on the homework this time? About an hour, a little bit more, a little bit less?
About an hour and a half.
Hour and a half?
Okay. An hour and a half.
I did them in an hour, but my answers might reflect that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I just want to make sure like we're not shooting way past the hour mark to, like 3 or 4 hours where I'm like, no, too much. Okay. And second question. You might have noticed a slight step up on these particular cases. Does everybody agree or about the same?
Agreed.
A couple of them were pretty complex. They took like a really deep read and you have to really pay attention. But that was, I like that.
Well, I'm glad everybody liked the slight bit of challenge for the set. Excellent. Good morning, D-Man. You want to be presenter? Let me make you presenter. One sec.
But I accidentally hit present rather than share screen, so I had no need for me to present. Thanks, though.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. Okay. Let's see. Other preliminary questions. I'm glad everybody enjoyed the homework this time. Anything that people had questions of about the Wednesday session, or questions generally about the training before we get started? Just a little bit of general game planning here. My idea or thought is that we will continue and finish lesson 3 on Monday, or for Monday, depending on how far we get through today's session, of course. And there goes the cat. Sorry, I knew that was going to happen. Anyway, with the idea being that we will at least start lesson 4 next week, if not get next week. We do have July 5th. That's the July 4th observation. So we won't have class on that day, and I will try to remember to cancel the meeting invite for that day without canceling the rest of the series. But I just want to make sure everybody was aware there will be no Citator training on July 5th, because I have absolutely no intention of opening my computer on that day. All right, so with just that reminder out of the way, I think we're ready to get started. So let me go ahead and see if it'll let me share my screen. We're good. It's thinking about it. And of course it flipped. Right screen. All right, so our first one for today is going to be Iskanian. And for this one, let's see. I will, of course, accept any volunteers if there's I'll pick somebody. Just like last time, there's a lot of cases where we have direct agreements. So when that happens, I'm only going to pick one person. Seeing no volunteers, Julie, will you lead us off? Julie, will you lead us off for this one?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes. I had cited in secondary opinion because he put it in the concurring and dissenting opinion. So it can't be cited in concurring or cited in dissenting. So I put it in a secondary opinion.
Beautiful.
Because okay, thank you. I'll stop.
That's perfectly right on. And again, just as a reminder to everybody, when something is in fact cited in another opinion, not the main body opinion, same reasoning that Julie had, you pick which type of other opinion it is, but we don't necessarily go into what the case did with it because it's not the main decision or the main thrust of the case. Any questions about that one? I also want to congratulate everybody. 100% agreement, 100% the right answer. Well done, everybody. All right. Acres. If this ever loads. There we go. For acres, Tom, will you tell us why you picked distinguish? Oh, you're on mute if you're talking.
Now I'm talking.
Okay.
It seemed like a classic use of distinguished treatment. They specifically refused to apply the Starr case's legal reasoning because of the case's factual dissimilarities.
Excellent.
And kind of the money quote was, but in this case, ...
That is very good key language for distinguished. Excellent. Yes. So there was large agreement on this particular one. So I'm just going to say yes, 100%. We'll move on to the next one. Let's see. America Online. There we go. And for this one, oops, different cast. Apparently, it's going to be a Friday. Christina, would you tell us why you selected apply?
Yes, I was really unsure about this one. And the reason I selected it is because I found the language where it said we disagree that Smith-Valentino can be read so narrowly. And I just reasoned that the court took the rule of reasoning and the result of Smith and they applied it to the AOL case several times throughout the opinion. So I just thought that that would be a better result for apply or treatment for apply.
Interesting. Excellent. Okay, and let's get a contrasting one. Sarah, can you tell us why you picked decline to extend? I think you're on mute if you're still talking.
I'm so sorry. So what I was saying is that I too was very conflicted, and I definitely was heading toward Christina's thinking. Finally, what I decided was I was looking at the language. We disagree that Smith-Valentino can be read so narrowly. And so thinking along the lines of, most negative, I sort of tried to work that into a decline to extend, but I definitely checked the unconfidence box on this one.
And thank you for bringing that up. So we've mostly been ignoring the confident, unconfident box so far, simply because at the very beginning, everybody is 100% unconfident about their answer because it's the very beginning. After lesson 3, I really encourage you to start using that confident, unconfident box, simply because I would prefer you be unconfident about a wrong answer, or excuse me, unconfident about a right answer than confident about a wrong answer. So using the confident, unconfident box can help you to figure out where you need to pay, a little bit extra attention or think a little bit harder about a couple of the dispositions. So it's really a great diagnostic tool for yourselves to check and see, are you starting to be confident about bad answers, in which case you might want to review those answers extra carefully. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So I do encourage you to use those as part of your self-study and or, self-check. If you find that you're starting to be confident about bad answers a lot, let us know so that we can, maybe discuss those dispositions in more detail together. Because sometimes it's a matter of, adjusting your definition of that particular disposition till it makes more sense with the way it works for the system, if that makes sense to everybody. All right. This is actually a tougher one. I was actually a little surprised to see this quite so so early in the session. So we do have a situation where the court is saying that Smith-Valentino, they don't think it can be read so narrowly. So they're disagreeing with one of the parties, Mendoza. So Mendoza is saying that this should be read more narrowly, that this should be constricted. They're disagreeing that it should be read that narrowly, which to me seems to be saying that they are agreeing with one of the parties in the interpretation of Smith-Valentino. So they're disagreeing with one party, they're agreeing with the other party, but that doesn't change necessarily how they're treating the case. They're just specifying which party they're going with, if that makes sense. I think the other portion of the language that's that you should consider is the part right here after, where they're saying that there's practical issues or there's difficulties in going down Mendoza's route. So they're saying that that doesn't make sense logically to use that particular answer. It's not a definitive statement on this one. I would personally go with an apply on this one, because it does seem like they're applying the logic of Smith-Valentino to the full case. Damien, do you have a strong opinion on this one?
Sorry, muted. I don't know. That sounds right to me.
Fair enough. So again, it's not. This is a little bit more of a Weebly one. This is a more difficult one. I personally would fall on the apply side though. Now, just as a reminder, why would this be an apply and not a follow? Can anybody tell me?
Facts.
Facts. Follow is facts. Yes, the mnemonic. There's no facts from Smith-Valentino here, so this would be an apply, not a follow. All right. Questions about this one before we continue? I think this is probably the hardest one out of all of lesson 3, maybe. So, all right. Hearing no questions, let's do baller. If this ever loads, there we go. All right. Diane, will you tell us why you selected cited?
It just said see also. I think I didn't see anything else that was and it just made a statement of law. I didn't notice anything else that was important, unless I missed something.
No direct miss. This is not a bad answer. This is one of 2 answers that I think would be acceptable for this one. The other one, of course, Eleanor, will you tell us why you selected apply?
I saw a statement that said, this principle applies squarely to the facts at hand.
So this is the statement.
So, yeah, so I thought they were applying the law, but not the facts. So I used apply instead of follow.
Bingo. So that's the correct distinction between follow and apply for this one, and why you would pick apply. And with this language right here, I would lean slightly in the direction of apply. Even though this is just a statement of law, they are saying that they are applying the statement of law, so I would go with apply, slight preference over cited. Questions about that one? You'll sometimes see this particular format occur in the case where there's a couple of cases where they're giving a statement of law from each one, and then immediately after it, they either say or indicate that they're using that particular principle. They're not necessarily going to specify which of the statements of that particular law they're applying. It's okay to still use an apply in that context because they are applying the principle that they have described this many ways. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. Alrighty, moving down the line. Our next one up is going to be Cleland. And for this one, a lot of agreement here. Tom, will you tell us why you picked follow?
They agreed, they seem to support the holding in the star case, and they used lots of facts. They described the star case factually.
Excellent. So we do have a ton of facts here. There's a description of it right here, and there's more lower down. So we do have plenty of facts to support a follow, and they do appear, in fact, to be using this case positively. So facts plus using it, follow. Any questions about that one? Well reasoned, everybody. I would not necessarily use and analogize with this case. I don't see the language where they're saying this is similar to, this is very likely to, this is related to. You tend to need the verbal cue or the setup of a comparison in order to use and analogize. Alrighty. So next one up we have County Los Angeles. And again, we have universal agreement on this one. So we're just going to get one statement of this one. Yeah, would you like to say why it's disapproved?
You called on me? Yeah, in any event, we disapprove National Auto. Those were the words of the court.
Yep, that one's a direct verbatim, nice and easy. I don't think anybody has any questions about that one. Literally everybody agreed. So yeah, well done, everybody. I think at this point it's fair to say that y'all are like batting 100% on the easy peasy ones, especially the ones with verbatim cues. So well done. All right, Hansen versus Sandridge. And we had a ton of agreement on this one as well. Brent, would you say why you picked distinguish?
I did distinguish. I didn't pull out any language. Okay. It says Hansen cite two cases involving express agreements, but such cases are in opposite. So that's distinguished language right there.
Yes. Inapposite is one of the classic signs of a distinguished. You should still read and get the context of what they're doing with it. But inapposite is a really good verbal cue that it's likely to be a distinguished. Anybody have any questions on that one? All right. Sorry, it takes a sec for this to load for some reason. Next one up is INRE LC. And again, we have 100% agreement. So Diane, would you tell us why this is superseded by statute?
Because it was decided before a 1997 amendment to statutory section.
Bingo. We have an amendment of a statute immediately following this case, superseded by statute. Well done, everybody. All right. Next up is hint. We have a ton of agreement here. Julie, would you say why this one is extend?
Because it uses the word dicta, which Tom reminded us is absolute. And shoot. None of the post-Vesely decisions inquired into the existence of a duty of care owed by the customer. And then they discussed privity, and then they discussed the negligence, but they did no more than enlarge the area of duty that are that Vesely recognized. And I don't. And I have it applies the star research. It reaches the same disposition and then rejects Vesely, if that's the way to pronounce it.
So that's a good reasoning, or at least good pieces to keep an eye on. I do want to point out a slightly simpler point. Does anybody else agree with me that there's a slightly simpler point to go for on this one?
Thank you.
I think it said somewhere we weren't not going to extend Vesely to this fact situation.
I'll give you guys a big hint. I went ahead and moved the screen to where it is for a reason. Anybody see it?
Does not extend to injuries to the drunken patron himself.
Yeah. So we have the court quoting the Vesely rule and saying that the rule does not extend right here. Okay. Now, that being said, a couple of things to note about what Julie said. The dicta one, I think the dicta quote was actually referencing a different case, so be careful when you're looking for keywords. Make sure it's actually the case that you're looking at. That's the only off point right there. But everything else, well, very well reasoned. Any questions about that one? Okay. And the only reason why I always, I think it's very helpful as part of the discussion to look for all of the points that everybody's come up with, because there's usually several points in the case that you can either use to support your decision or that you have to make sure you've accounted for when making your decision. So don't be disappointed if you've gotten extra or beyond the initial. I just want to make sure to point out the easiest ones as well as the longer reasoning as well. All right. I think next up we have Park versus Board of Trustees. And we have, again, across the board agreement on this one. So, Christine, I think it's your turn.
I chose disapprove, and the reason I chose that is because the California Supreme Court states we disapprove, and then and they're disapproving of an appellate court case.
Bingo, straight on. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Is that the same thing everybody got? Looks good. All right. I'm really loving how much you guys are agreeing on this one. So next one up is, and our first one where we can have some discussion here. All right. There's a big contrast between the opinions. That's done like that. Eleanor, can you tell us why you picked apply? I think you might be on mute.
You picked one I didn't have any notes for.
I'm good at that. I remember about
that. I remember thinking this was a hard one, and like I sort of waffled on where I was going to go with it, but I think they ended up discussing Poston, but really just the law of Poston, so I picked apply.
So we do have quite a few, well, not quite a few, we have a couple of sites to post in. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Let's try that again. So you are correct. We don't have very many facts stated here. In fact, I agree that it appears to be 100% law and not facts. So follow would not be a good choice for this one. Neither would analogize. There's no language here that's saying they're comparing or it's similar or it's like to. So we don't have any comparative language. So analogize is not a good choice. I do want to point out this particular sentence right here, or these two sentences rather. Sorry, I didn't realize the period was there. Where they're specifically stating not only is there no case going against Poston, but to the contrary, the Supreme Court has approved of Poston and Lewis. So those are both big hints that this is in fact a positively applied case instead of a negatively applied one. So since we've eliminated the other two positives, the remaining one is apply, and apply is a good choice for this one. Anybody have any question about how the reasoning for that one goes?
I felt that I was reluctant to apply or use Poston because the court was sort of avoiding using Poston in favor of Lewis. And even though it kept mentioning Poston, it was always in the context of Lewis. So I just put cited, which obviously is too weak, but because it is a positive, you know, they do have a positive gloss on it, but they're not really using it. They're using.
And I agreed with Diane, except I chose discuss because they used it a lot. And
they did use it a lot.
But they didn't say anything about it.
They did use it a lot. They didn't do a lot of positive approving on it. I do agree. But if there's even a smack of positive, you should tilt in the direction of positive. So this is just back to that lovely pun that Damien put into the training guide. You can start on the neutral discussed, but if there's even a hint in either a positive or a negative treatment, you should aim in that particular direction because disgust is a disgusting or not favored disposition. So in the name of trying to lean away from the disfavored disposition, this would go with the faint positive and end up in a plot. Now, there's going to be different degrees. You know, a court might rave and say, this is the best case ever, and we love it to pieces, and you should pull up a chair, and we'll talk about our favorite case ever. Yeah, that's definitely a positive treatment of a case. And then there will be ones where the court's like, this is the law, okay, and we keep going. And that's still going to be an apply, even though the court isn't, you know, falling in love with a particular case. So don't let the different degrees of positive push you away from using a positive disposition. There can be different degrees of it. It's just a matter of, did the court actually mention the case and then use it in a positive manner? If so, it should lean away from the blue neutrals towards the green positives. Yes, you have a question? Oh, you are on mute, though.
So if it says the best case ever, obviously it's positive. But if it just says this is the law, that's also positive?
If they,
That's not neutral?
if they use it. So if they say, you know, this is the law and therefore we did this, or this is the law and this case is controlled by it, or this is the law which means this, which means that, those are all examples of positive. If they just say the law and they just keep rolling, you know, they don't do anything with it, then it would be a cited or in New York. But in this particular example, this is still going to be a positive, even if they're doing it in the frame of a negative. So they're saying there's no negative treatment. It's still a positive statement that Poston is still good law. So.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's a great question. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to mention this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to mention the different degrees of positive. You'll also see the same thing on the negative side. There will be different degrees of negative. This is the most horrible thing ever. What were they thinking? Versus, you know, them just saying, this is what we're doing. Keep in mind, There will be different degrees of positive, different degrees of negative. That doesn't change if they're positive or negative.
I'm so sorry, but is there it sounds like there's a train going through, and this is what I was confused about the most. So either I can talk to you later. Would that be okay?
Yes.
I also could not hear. Yeah, that's I don't know if the train's on Aaron's side or somebody else's, but yeah, I couldn't hear anything that you just said.
Let me go ahead and repeat what I just said, and if people are still confused, I'll try again. So there always will be cases where there's different degrees of positive or different degrees of negative. If using the negative example, a court might say this is the most vomit-inducing case ever. The people who wrote it were on drugs, and we disavow them. They're just terrible people. That's perfectly fine. That is definitely and definitively a negative. Make sure you use negative for that. But they can also say it more mildly. They can say, this is just not the case for us. They can say, this case is misguided. They can say any different degree of negative. It doesn't change the fact that it's still a negative interpretation of the case. Same thing happens with positive. You can have different degrees of positive. They can be in love with the case. They can just say this is what the law is and keep rolling with it. The fact that it is positive is the tilt away from the neutral. Essentially, a neutral treatment, they do happen. People use just cite cases and keep rolling. But neutral doesn't really tell the person who's looking at the case very much. It doesn't give them anything to sink their teeth into. They can't glance at it and go, I should read this in more detail later. It's not, I don't want to say it's not a great treatment. I want to say that it's not the most useful treatment for the user. So that's why disgust is disfavored, and you should try and tilt it either to positive or negative when possible. Even if it's a weak one. All right, does that make sense, Sans train? Okay, we'll go with that then. Alrighty, and again, questions afterwards is welcome as well. I'm not trying to discourage that in the slightest. All right, next one up is Doolin. And you're probably tired of me saying this, but there was lots of agreement on this one. So let's go with Diane. Would you like to do this one?
I had declined to extend based on some explicit language. We declined to extend.
Hey, you answered it before my computer finished to load the case. Better. Yeah, this one has a verbatim quote on it, so well done. Everybody caught that. Nice. And I'm not sure why my computer is struggling with this one, but we'll keep going. People v. Francis is next up. And again, a lot of agreement and on the right answer. So, Eleanor, you want to take this one?
I chose codified by statute, which I think is one that I missed superseded by statute a lot of times because I think I wanted something more explicit. I think I misunderstood it, but this one I did pick codified by statute.
Okay. And is there a particular language that drove you towards codified?
I didn't put anything in my notes, but I know there must have been something pretty explicit.
Okay. Anybody else have a particular language segment they used to pick codified?
It says the legislature codified the court's decision.
It does.
But this was one of those cases where I felt like they were so positively discussing the case that like another treatment might be more helpful to a user.
Yeah, so the California court actually is in love with the exact language of Pitchess. Even though the legislature later codified it, they didn't use the exact literal sentences from Pitchess. So you'll see this come up in this particular case a lot. The court will be, pitch S, pitch S, pitch S, pitch S. Oh, by the way, this was codified. I agree a little bit that, it's probably with the degree that the court is in love with pitch S, that sometimes it might be better for the other dispositions. But as a matter of consistency, since technically the statute supersedes pitch S, the best disposition is going to stay with the codified. It wouldn't upset me if you used one of the positive dispositions, but I would say that for consistency and to make sure we're all interpreting the dispositions the same way, that the best one is going to be codified, which everybody caught. Well done. And honestly, I have never seen a court be quite so effusive over pitch S. They just love it to death, and it comes up all the time. So, details. Alrighty, I think that takes us to People v. Mendoza. And we had a lot of agreement on this one. Tom, it's been a while. Would you say why you picked decline to follow?
Because of the language from the opinion, although we are sympathetic to this conclusion, we do not follow DeLong's holding.
So that's the sentence right here. And again, this is a good reminder. Not a bad idea to take a glance at the last citation of the case you're looking at and then work your way back up to the top. So here's the last citation for DeLong, and here's the language that we were just looking at right here. Any questions about People v. Mendoza? Or rather, DeLong, I guess, more correctly. All right. Almost to the end. Last one up, or next to last one up, is People v. Petty. Yeah, it's loading. It's thinking. We had a ton of agreement on this one as well. Brent, would you like to finish the set?
I use distinguish. There is quite a bit of factual discussion about it and how it's different from the current case. And then there's the explicit line, how Baron is distinguishable from this case.
So this is the language he was just quoting. So well done. I'm pretty sure everybody caught that because we have 100% agreement again. All righty. Well done, everybody. Look at that. We have 20 minutes left. Y'all are doing super well. And like I said, there's a ton of agreement between the cases that you, or the dispositions you selected, which is fantastic to see, especially at this point. I think we're on a good pace. Is anybody feeling overwhelmed or too much homework or uncomfortable with the pace we're currently at?
Nope.
Okay. So I'm going to hold you guys to that. I think that we're at a good tempo pace-wise. So what I'd like to do for Monday is the remainder of lesson 3. So that takes us all the way down to Whitman, line 91, I believe, on your spreadsheet. Then Monday we will assess and see if we can make it all the way through lesson 4 or what during next week. I do want to remind everyone, like I said at the beginning, there will be no session on July 5th because that's their July 4th observation. So we will not have a Monday session that week. We'll only have Wednesday and Friday. So don't come because I won't be here. Otherwise, any questions as a whole? Anything we haven't covered? Concerns?
I'll just add, I'm really happy with your guys' progress. I know Aaron is too. So thank you so much for your hard work, and I'm looking forward to continuing this.
Very much so. So, all right. Well, if there's nothing else, 20 minutes back. Have a great weekend. See you guys on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.